Well, hey, welcome to Slice of Life, episode 2, season 2. Last episode, I had Jason, Stephanie's husband, here. We talked about movies, one of my favorite things to talk about, honestly. Yes, you can be a Christian and watch movies, but watch that one. It was really about how do I look at TV or movies? What should I be watching? And then where can I find God? So that was kind of a fun conversation. But you guys might remember Stephanie from, do you remember what episode it was?
I know it's called The Puzzle, but I don't remember.
The Puzzle, yeah. It was a great conversation that we had. So I thought it'd be fun to bring her back on again because I think we had a good conversation. And one of the things I like about Stephanie is that for those that kind of remember, she's going through her master's program, right? Divinity, right?
Yeah.
MDiv, right? Going through that. She's working to be a chaplain in the Air Force, which is really exciting. But one of the things I enjoy is that you email me questions, right? Hard questions, which is great. And let me just tell you that for those of you that are Christians that have a pastor, man, ask them hard questions. Ask her hard questions. They love a good pastor is going to love that, right? They're going to love that because it challenges them. And it helps kind of move them. So one of the questions that you asked was talking about Job and free will, and the devil made me do it. So I kind of wanted to have that conversation, because I think it's a bigger conversation than we could have just via email. But also I think it's a bigger conversation that others might need, right, to go through. So just tell me. Tell me. I already read it, but so let's just go through. What were your thoughts? You know.
So I'm in the Old Testament studies class, and we're going through the book of Job. My professor is just talking about how great Job is, how deep, how wonderful, and I'm like, I don't get it. Job is a poor dude who, he's a rich guy who had all.
He was rich.
Yeah, he was rich, right? Who had all these terrible things happen to him. All of his children are killed. His servants are killed. His animals are stolen or killed. His wife's mean to him as he's sitting there picking at his sores.
Curse God and die.
Curse God and die, old man. No, none of that is great. And then his friends come along telling him, well, you must have sinned.
Yeah.
Because why else would this be happening to you? I'm like, well, it sounds like Job has an unsupportive wife and crappy friends. That seems to be the real curse of his life right now, is who he is surrounding himself with.
Yeah.
And, Job stands firm, and he never sins against God. He questions God. And my favorite part of the book is when God comes back and is like, all right, where were you?
Yeah.
Do you know where the snow's stored? Do you know all these answers of life?
Right.
And of course, Job's like, no, I've heard you now. I've seen you, and I'm sorry. I'm small.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. But I'm like, I don't get the great theology here, other than we're small and we don't get it. I get that part.
Yeah.
But the whole conversation, what is it, like 35 chapters or however long it is up until that point of his friends just berating him, basically. That's the part where I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, they keep coming back saying, you sinned, just admit it,
Just admit it. Don't lie to us. All this things. And he never did. And then you think about, well, the devil or the accuser, you talked a lot about that before too.
Yeah.
It's the accuser who got permission to do these things to Job.
Right.
So does the accuser have permission to burn my toast, as I told you, or throw a rock in my windshield to ruin my day, or what role then does the accuser have?
How far can the enemy go? Yep.
Yeah, because we're protected. We're protected by the blood, but we also live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
So where's the line here?
Yeah. And wouldn't it be cool if I could just draw a line and say, well, this is exactly right. He can only do this, And I think there's so much in Job. Again, it's actually one of my favorites, which my wife doesn't get it either. She
that makes
hates.
Me feel better.
She's better. She used to hate it. Now she only loathes it. Right? It's like she's getting through it and trying to study it multiple times because she's the same way. Like, I don't get it. Why do you like this book so much? And part of it is poetry. I'm not saying it's not real that it didn't happen, but it's written in a poetry form, so that's why there's so much fluff.
Yeah.
So much, right? So they've kind of, obviously these guys did not probably say exactly what is written down, but I think that's part of it. but the whole, and you mentioned it, like my favorite part, same part is when God's like, were you there?
Yeah.
You know, in that moment where Job realizes, wow, I really miss God here.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I knew, but now I see. You know, I love that when he says, I see. I heard about you, now I see you. Now I can comprehend you. And I think that's such a big part of it. But I think what to me is so telling in the book of Job is again about God's ultimate purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
And his ultimate purpose in life is about a relationship with us, and that he is a good father.
Yeah.
And there are things that happen in our life that he's aware of, but he's aware of in the concept of that his desire is to draw us closer, to reveal himself in ways, and to move, you know. And so when we think about, let's just say Job, in this case, Job had a good understanding who God is.
Right.
Nothing that Job ever said was wrong, but it wasn't the fullness of who God was. Yeah. So would have Job ever had the opportunity to really know who God is, except for through the moments, through that season of his life?
I get it, because you're saying like you have to go through the trial to get a bigger piece of the puzzle, or a bigger piece of who God is.
Sometimes because we've come so far, right? Sometimes we've come so far, and we're like, okay, this is as good as it gets, or right. You know. And so I think part of the Job story is that story of that which God is going to allow, God is also going to work through.
Yeah.
It's the scripture, one of my favorites. I say it all the time. God works all things out for the good.
Yeah.
You know, so he's going to take that which the enemy meant for evil, again, that's right. Scripture, and turn it into good. That God is going to work. And what he does is he uses those moments of revelation, you know, to take us into a deeper moment with him. Think about Elijah, if you know the story of Elijah, and one of the best stories in the Bible, and he's there with the other prophets of Baal, right? This heathen god. Oh, man, and he taunts them, right? So if you guys have not read this, he taunts them.
Funny.
And he's saying, well, what, get louder, because maybe your God's relieving himself. Maybe your God's going to the bathroom. Yeah. That's exactly what he says, right? It just in biblical terms, they kind of edit that piece out, right? Your God's on the toilet, so you got to be louder. Cut yourself, do all this stuff, right? It doesn't happen. The fire doesn't come down, and then he's like, "Hey, put a ton of water on him during a drought." I mean, that's amazing. Water, it's a waste of water. Throw all this water on the fire, and then he prays to God, and God consumes it. And they kill all these prophets. This defining moment, the Super Bowl of Christianity, the Super Bowl of being a prophet. And what happens next? He runs away from Jezebel, because he hears that she's coming after him, but God used that moment to what? Take him to the mountain, right? He before he gets to the mountain, he sends angels. They minister to him. He gets to the mountain, but God's not in the earthquake. He's not in the mighty wind. He's not in the noise. He was in the stillness.
Yeah.
And again, I think it ties into that Job concept that God was in all of that. But what he wanted Elijah to do was to find a deeper calling, a deeper sense of him, because Elijah had saw him in the mighty fire that came down from the altar.
Yeah.
But had he ever really experienced God in the stillness, in that moment? And we go through the trials, we go through the struggles, we go through seasons in life, I believe, because what God is going to use those for. Again, not that God is causing those. We have to be cautious, right? But he's going to use those. And what his desire is to draw us into a closer revelation of who he is, right? And
that does reframe all of Job.
It does.
It does, yeah.
Well, and we just talked about, before we got on the air here, Wesley, and John Wesley. And I was sharing with you Georgia, right? He came to Georgia, back in the 18th century, and trying to save the Native Americans, try to save the colonists that were here. He leaves on a ship as a failure in his mind, and there's a massive storm that's going on. He doesn't think they're going to make it through. He's scared to death. He's at the bottom deck. There are other Christians, these Moravians, that are up on the deck, and they're worshiping God in the moment. There's no fear. They're out actually in the storm.
Yeah.
You know, they're not sheltered. They're in the storm worshiping God. For Wesley, he had it reframed his mindset on who God is, you know, in that moment, and then who he is in that, what he called nominal Christianity, you know. And so if we begin to look at every season as a way of God going to utilize that season, the good, the bad, the ugly,
right,
and try to draw us into a deepening relationship or a deepening revelation of who he is. Again, Job, the framework of Job changes. The framework of Elijah, the framework of Peter, all these men and women that have dealt with things, right, in their Old Testament, New Testament, and what we deal with today.
Yeah.
We begin to look and say, okay, God, what are you doing in this season? Not why are you doing this, but what are you doing? You know, is there an aspect of you that you're trying to show me that, unfortunately, the only way I would see it is by going through this difficulty, taking me into the storm, taking me into the darkness.
Yeah.
Is that the only time that I'm really going to see the light?
Yeah. Jason and I were talking recently about this, and it's, you know, sometimes I think we make choices too that are not maybe what God would have wanted us to do. Like, we act before we pray, right? Both guilty of that. And how God is still there, though. You know, when we moved up here, I took an internship at a country club.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is great. I love working in restaurants, whatever. But maybe that wasn't the best place for me. It wasn't the best environment for me to be in, probably.
Yeah.
But, you know, God still used being there.
Yeah.
Probably had something a lot better planned if I had just stopped and asked and prayed and done all the things I was supposed to do instead of just being obstinate and stiff-necked and going my own way. But how beautiful is that? Like, how gracious is that God is still like, hey, okay, that's not what I really wanted you to do, but we're going to use that. You're going to learn from it. You're going to use it, and I'm going to use you where you're at to try to help the people there. I think that's very generous of God to give us that much credit, that it's even when you make that wrong turn.
It's that grace and mercy.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that kind of leads us to the next thought. Part of that is, again, where's that line for the enemy? Where's the line? And you know, you and I talked about it before. It's not a conversation I have with a lot of people, but you know, the accuser of the brethren, and what was that really the enemy? Was that being Satan itself? Is there actually an angel who at the judgment seat will be the accuser of the brethren? You know, it's an interesting concept. But either way, it's really asking the question: what can the enemy touch?
Yeah.
What is he allowed to do to me? We can go through a lot of different scriptures, a lot of different stories. I think of Jesus, you know, early on in his ministry or pre-ministry, he's baptized, and where does he go from there? He goes to the desert, and on the 40th day, that, you know, the enemy comes and begins to tempt him and try to manipulate and twist the scriptures.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you look at that and go, okay, so the enemy didn't have any power to harm Jesus, but he had everything in him to tempt,
to whisper
Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. To sharing this today with someone, it's like, if you look at the words of Satan, they weren't lies. They were just manipulation of the word.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, Jesus, just throw yourself down. You know, and it says in the word that the angels are going to catch you. Well, that's true. So Jesus could have, right?
Yeah.
You know, but knowing the intent of that. And one of the things that I'd shared with you is, you know, the Bible calls the enemy as like a lion that's prowling.
Yeah.
It's going around and looking. And the reason a lion prowls is really one reason. It's to find the weakness.
Yeah.
Whether it's the weakness of the weakest individual, you know, in that moment, the one that's away from the herd, or to find that there's something that a specific animal at this point, right, is doing that they could see that one's limping, that one, right?
That one wanders off on its own.
And so it's a planning. It's cavorting. It's trying to figure this out. Like, how can I better attack? That's exactly what the enemy does.
Yeah.
Paul says, and I wish I could remember the reference, but you know, that we're not surprised by the tactics of the enemy. It shouldn't shock us.
Yeah.
Because the tactics are always the same. A manipulation of the truth, a prowling on the weakness of who we are. You know, the moments of whether it's a pride issue. And, you know, Job, although he didn't sin, if we start playing this out, and I'm thinking this out loud now, you know, we start playing it out with his friends, with those individuals, we can begin to see the enemy's voice in the individual.
Oh yeah.
Right. And how easy it was for them to begin to manipulate what was truth. You know, oh, you sinned, because God's not gonna allow this to someone who's
never
righteous.
To a holy man, never. No.
Is that not what we hear today?
Yeah.
Over and over again, and we hear it again in the New Testament. There's one point they see this blind guy, and the disciples say, you know, he's born blind. Well, who sinned, his parents or this guy?
Yeah.
You know, in obvious, well, if something bad is happening to you, therefore it must be because you've sinned, because you know, and I think the opposite of that is true, where we see someone who's blessed and we think therefore that means they're righteous. Right?
If only all of the righteous people were blessed. I mean, I feel like that's such a common thing you hear from people in ministry is, I mean, you've said it before too, is the moment you decide to go deeper into it and go into ministry, you better put your guard up. You better be on guard, because that's when the most attacks are going to start coming.
Right.
You're obeying, you're listening, you're doing what God wants. He's not going to let that go unchecked.
Yeah. And how easy is it though? Again, when we look at the enemy, we think the enemy's come to kill, steal, and destroy, which is exactly what the word says.
Right.
But it's a manipulation of that word. We think that he's come to kill, steal, and destroy us, meaning that to harm us, to make us, you know, die. You know, no. If he can kill our relationship with God, if he can manipulate our mindsets to kill, steal, and destroy, if he could steal our focus away from that which God has for us, you know, then he's going to do it. And I think I shared this story with you. I was working with a Fortune 400 company, and they had offered me a great salary, but the package included moving to another state, and it would mean that I would no longer be able to be a pastor. I was a full-time pastor, full-time working, and I went and I was playing golf with a doctor friend who was actually at my church, and he said this to me. He goes, "Why would you turn that down?" He goes, "Not only is it more money, but," he goes, "you know, the church you're running, I think we're running like 60 people at that point."
Right.
He said, "You know, you deal with like 100, like 200 people. I think I had 185 people in that department that I dealt with on a regular basis." And he began to tell me, well, so, I mean, this has got to be God, because now you're going to make more money. Your wife's never going to have to work again.
Yeah.
You know, you'll be able to minister to 200 people, you know, on a regular basis. All the things that sound good.
Yeah.
But that's not what God desired for me.
No.
That's not where he wanted me. And so, you know, when I look at that as the enemy blessing me, or trying to bless me in what I think blessing, or defining blessing, which is more money.
Money, stability, position, power, what have you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you begin to look at it that way and go, actually that would have drawn me away. It would have stolen my focus on God. It would have drawn me away, destroyed the dream that God had for me, the plans he had for me. So in the moment of extreme blessing from our world, tangible blessings, you know, was actually a curse.
Yeah.
You know, but we don't see that. And so we have this line that we want to draw, like the enemy can only do so much.
He would never do anything good for us.
Yeah, exactly.
But
therefore there is no line. You know, if we think of it in that mindset, it's like, okay, he can affect all of this, but he can't touch this other realm. No, I think the enemy, if we look at him in that idea of a prowling lion, he's looking for the areas that are weak.
Yeah.
And God has allowed him to test, to push on those areas of weakness. Why? Because God desires to make us stronger.
Right.
You know, it's the old saying, which is not in the Bible. Please, it's not in the Bible, guys. Listen to this. You know, God will never give you more than you can handle. It's one of the worst quoted scriptures out there because it's not even a scripture.
Right.
But I've heard it from Christian upon Christian upon Christian. And the truth is, God will give you more than you can handle so that you turn to him.
Yeah.
You know, in scripture says that in my weakness, his strength is made perfect. And the idea is not just perfected strength. It's the idea that his strength is then utilized. God's strength is utilized in me.
Because we stop.
Because we stop. Yeah. Because we realize we can't go any farther.
Yeah.
You know, and so what, you know, we kind of keep going back, and I'm playing with this whole idea of a line with the enemy because there is no line.
Yeah.
Right. Because the idea of a line is saying that, okay, as long as I stay on this side, I'm going to be okay. You know, and the truth is he's circling us.
Yeah. There is no safe side.
There is no safe spot. Yeah. Right.
Now, you said in the email, too, that it's not just about battling against the devil. Yeah. We're battling against ourselves, which I found that to be a very helpful reminder because the devil feels scary. The devil feels like, yes, with God, all things are possible and he gives me strength, but the devil is, I can't beat the devil. Right. But Stephanie, I can fight Stephanie. We're equal weight.
Yeah.
And so the idea of like we're fighting against our own flesh.
Yeah.
And our own temptation, not just what the enemy is bringing. Can you talk more on that? Because that, for me, was really helpful and kind of reframed my own like self-talk and the voices I hear and how I'm talking throughout the day.
Well, and that is because Scriptures tells us multiple times. Old Testament says that the heart above all things is deceitful.
Right.
New Testament goes a step farther and relates to the Proverbs talk about it as well in the Old Testament. The New Testament says this. It says that when we are drawn away by our own desires, you know, and it's so interesting to me because again, we always think about the devil made me do it.
Yes.
You know, we always think about like the burnt toast. I love that analogy. The wet socks, right?
Yeah.
Those things are super frustrating.
You get enough of them in the day and you blow up.
Yeah. And you're like, man, Satan hates me.
On me today.
Yes, he does hate you. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy. But it's how you react, or let me say, it's the very desires of your heart that become the thing that drives us to do wrong. Now, again, the enemy's out there, and he knows our weakness. He knows our desires because we let him know our desires.
Yeah.
He knows, oh, man, that button, you've been married long enough to know this, right? You know the buttons that you can push, Jason.
Yeah.
Right? Oh. And you can get them going. I know with my wife, 32 years of marriage, I guarantee you I know every single button.
Yeah.
And I still push them because I'm an idiot, you know. Even after 32 years of marriage, I've not learned better. Like, she's mad and I will continue to push, you know, literally just push on her back like, hey, you know, just like that kid in you know, elementary school, you know, is the boys, you always, the girl you like, you picked on, you know, I do that with her 32 years later. We know those buttons. The enemy knows the buttons as well. Yeah. And he knows the buttons of our desires. He knows the buttons of those things that annoy us, that frustrate us. He knows, you know, the idea that of what we're going to, not what we're going to do that day, but kind of our schedule, our plan.
Right.
You know, we think about like Sunday mornings are always one of the toughest.
Yeah.
You know, well, why? Because the enemy knows he wants nothing more than to make sure that you don't get to church.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
and the Sundays that are the hardest are usually the ones that you need the most.
Though need guaranteed. Yeah. It cracks me up that when we as a church and 25 years of doing this, the smaller attended services are always the best.
Yeah.
You know, it's because the people that got there are the ones that pushed through.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right? They pushed through whatever a situation was going on, and God honors that. And I think so when we begin to frame our mind, and I love that you brought this out, we begin to frame our mind like it's my own desire.
Yeah.
That is drawn me into sinning. It's my own desire, that has tempted me. You know.
Yeah.
I begin to stop pointing fingers at everybody else. I start looking at my own life, and then I think you had said it. Then my actions become different because I begin to see I've got to take some ownership to this.
Yeah.
Right. When I go to heaven, I sit in that judgment seat. God's not going to say, "Oh, you know what? Hey, on that day, Satan was really really working on you.
He was really just on everything.
So I'm giving you a pass that day. No, he's gonna look at you and say, "What's wrong with you?"
It's just burnt toast. Get over
it was just burnt toast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible thing,
It's rough, especially if it's that last croissant from Costco and now you're out.
Yeah, right.
Rough days.
And so I think it begins to be a really tough situation when we have to realize that it's us.
Yeah. They say, when you point your finger, you got three fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
That's really that kind of is where it hit me, and I was like, oh no, I can't blame this on the devil.
Yeah.
I got it. I have to take responsibility. Yeah. This is a Stephanie problem, which I don't know. That's a little bit. Oh, it's rough to have to confront, right? But at the same time, it is a little empowering because if it's my problem, that means that through Christ, with prayer, with realizing where it's coming from, we can change.
Yeah.
We can get better. We can draw closer. We can make better choices.
Yeah.
You don't have to get mad. You can, hey, we're going to take a minute. We're going to pray first. I did that with my son before we homeschooled today. You just 6 years old. Every now and then you can just see, he wants to fight today.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not going to start it. We're going to pray. We're going to invite God into our classroom. And then we're going to worship. And then we're going to do homeschooling.
Yeah.
And no, it still won't be perfect. But I will not be starting the day at 8. It will bring us down. And then we can get through everything else. And that is, that's what we should model for our kids, right? Is bringing God into the everyday.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Flipping that around, I think that's such a cool concept, because I think if we come in guarded, and what I mean guarded by understanding there is a lion out there, that there is an enemy out there, and again, he is going to try to do whatever he can to derail us.
Yeah.
And when you walk into that situation, not fearful, but understanding.
Yeah, you're more prepared.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, therefore, you do begin to do, or should begin to do things that maybe you wouldn't have done before, and go, okay, can we start our day out differently? Or how do I better handle this situation, this circumstance? Was there a better way or a different way that I can focus my attention? I just saw, and I don't know the study, so I don't know if this is right or not, but I can tell you from history, it sure is. And it was on, I think it was Instagram, and this guy's talking to John Bevere, a great writer, by the way, Beta Satan, if you ever read that one of the best ones, Good or God, Good or Greater. But he was sharing it, they were doing stats on people reading the Bible. You
right.
Seen this?
I think the Instagram page posted that today, right?
Yeah. And, it's like if you read it one day, nothing, 2 days, nothing, 3, there's like this blip. And then all of a sudden on the 4th day, I think depression decreased by 30%.
Yeah.
Alcoholics, like they felt 57%. I mean, it's just all of a sudden this massive jump in our mental capacity of having more joy, having more peace begins to jump. Why? Because we're beginning to reframe our mindset, right? And that which we're putting into us is counteracting all the other stuff that's there.
Yeah.
We're in the series on voices, and I think that's such a key mindset to have, that I do have voices in my head.
Absolutely.
Right?
We are all a little bit crazy.
Right. We're all a little bit, right? And those voices have been put in my head, whether I like it or not. They've been put in my head by people I love, by people I can't stand, and they've been put in from generations to generations. Yeah. But they have absolutely no power over me other than the power I give them.
Yeah. And
I think it's sin, and what you kind of alluded to is that I all of a sudden begin to think, hey, this is me, right? This my own desires bringing me into temptation, into sinning, and so therefore, I'm powerful enough because of God that I don't have to do that any longer. No. And I think we're talking about these voices. Too many are like, well, I've got all these voices, and I have my voices telling me I'm not good enough. I'm not. Yeah, well, they're there, and I'm sorry to tell you, they're not going away.
No. They sometimes get louder. The more
right.
you're like, no, I can't. No, that's when they get louder.
Yes.
Speaking from experience, like that's what we
But
hear.
we can silence them.
Yeah.
And we silence them by not acting on those voices.
Yeah.
And that's the only power we give them. We don't allow them to manipulate our emotions or our actions, right, or our voice. We don't allow that to happen, because we identify who we really are, which should be children of God if we're Christians.
Yeah.
That I'm a child of God, right? And I think like full circle then coming right back to this whole idea of Job and this whole idea of what can the enemy do to me? He can do a lot, right? Yeah. And there's evil in the world, like you talked about, and he can manipulate those people to do things that are horrendous.
Yeah.
And so we're not, at no point am I making light of anything that anybody's dealing with. But at the end of the day, do we really believe that God will work all things out for those who love him, called according to his plans and purpose? If we truly believe that and understand that we only sin because of the temptations we have of our own desires.
Right.
Okay. You put those together, and then all of a sudden you go, okay, Satan's not as big as I thought he was.
No. I think that he does that to trick us.
Oh, yeah.
He wants us to give him credit for burning our toast. He wants us to give him credit for the rock that hit your windshield and all these things because, doesn't that just make him look so much bigger and more powerful and more involved in your life? And, if I flicked a rock in your windshield, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And I think that we say that as Christians, sometimes we go, the devil is after you. We do say that.
Yeah.
But I think we need to stop.
Yeah.
Because we're giving him credit where he does not deserve credit.
Right.
And maybe, the person who's coming, Safelite or whoever comes to fix your windshield, maybe they needed to talk to you that day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a disadvantage. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And if we looked at every bad thing as an opportunity, well, wouldn't we go through our lives feeling like a lot more prepared and excited and, it's a learning opportunity. That's what they say, right?
And I think, there's a story that always cracks me up because it shows you how dumb I am. Right. So I keep telling it because, I'm dumb and dumber.
Getting your doctorate degree.
So here we are, and this happened at this church. It was a couple years ago. And one of the guys here, Dr. Mike, hey, Dr. Mike, and we were out hanging up a prayer banner, right? Because I want to pray for people, right? I want to, and we are having the toughest time. We cannot get the stakes in the ground. I can't get that banner to align.
Yeah.
It's frustrating me. You probably know me well enough that I want things good. I want them done well.
Yeah.
And
they can't be crooked.
Right. And I'm working so hard in getting this, and I'm just frustrated because I know my time. I don't have enough time for this, and I've got other things to do. I will tell you, we get done with that banner. Took way too long, and we're walking back, and this young lady drives up, and you can just see pain in her face.
Yeah.
And we get the chance to pray with her. She's long story. She tells this long story, and she goes, I don't know what to do. Is there anybody that could pray for me? And I'm like, so we end up praying for her, and incredible moment.
Didn't see your well-hung banner?
Never, didn't see the banner, right? Just was like, she just saw us walking and realized that she saw a church sign.
Yeah.
Right. And so we end up praying for her. And, I walked out of that moment. I'm like, James, you're an idiot. And the reason I'm an idiot is because I was doing the one thing God desired me to do, and I needed to be frustrated in that moment so that lady would have saw us walking. Because if not, we would have been done an hour earlier. I would have been out of there.
Yeah.
And she would have had nobody.
Yeah.
Right.
He held you up just enough.
Yeah. And here I'm super frustrated because everything's not working according to my plans and my purposes, and here it is, God using that. And the enemy was doing a great job speaking into my life and reminding me of all the critical things I had to do that day.
Yeah.
Right.
You're running late. You're 5 minutes behind. You're 10 minutes behind. Come on, go.
But the most important thing I needed to do that day there was nothing that trumped that moment.
Yeah.
That 20 minutes of just praying with that young lady and just sharing God with her, and never saw her again. And man, maybe she was an angel. I don't know.
Yeah.
To remind me of
your real mission,
of why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I think for me, bishop in the Church of God and getting my doctorate, and I have those moments all the time that I have to remind myself all the time. Maybe this frustration is on purpose. Maybe this hardship is on purpose. It's really what what you were saying about, maybe I need that crack in my windshield so that the safe light comes and I can minister to them.
Yeah.
Maybe my car needs to break down so this other thing can happen.
Yeah.
And if we changed our attitude and thought, okay, God, what are you doing here? What are you doing in this season? What is it that you want me to see? Is this an opportunity? It takes those burnt toast and the wet socks and those struggle moments, and it begins to reframe them in my mind personally.
Yeah.
To go, okay, God, I'm ready. Something's I burnt all the toast. Okay, it's gonna be good. Like something, because I know, God, I know you well enough to know that you love me enough that you'd want me to have good toast.
Yeah.
So if this is burnt, there's got to be you've got to have a plan behind this.
Yeah.
Again, and don't hear me say that God orchestrated the pain.
No.
Right?
No.
God doesn't do that.
No.
But he doesn't also stop the pain. He uses the pain when it happens. There's I think it's in Proverbs that, or maybe even Psalms, and it says that God, he houses all of our tears. Like he's got a bottle for our tears. It's just this intimacy that he's aware of what we're dealing with, and what he does, because he's a good father, is, I can't say good father anymore because that song, by the way, I just like good father.
You go into the lyrics.
Right. He's such a good father. I did it. Right. That he's going to allow us to go through those.
Yeah.
Because if we're good parents, you got 3, I've got 2. They're old now. There's times they've got to go through pain because you learn in pain.
Yeah.
You learn through those moments where if I just safeguard them their whole life, the minute they come to a pain moment and I'm not there, what happens? They fall apart.
Yeah.
And man, doesn't that just to me personally, it's those moments like the lady at the prayer thing, right? It's those moments. It's just like kind of kicks me in the head. It says, okay, remember why you're here.
Yeah.
Remember the purpose I have for you.
Yeah.
It reframes everything we begin to do and to think about. And I begin to, as crazy as this may sound, thank God in the pain.
Yeah.
Because I know at the backside of it, the vision looking back, I'm going to see in hindsight, I'm going to see how God worked in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've talked a little bit before about, we had a miscarriage, and I've told others, women who have had miscarriages too, I said, I never want you to think God took your baby. God did not take your baby. That's the worst thing you can say to someone who just suffered a miscarriage is, well, your baby's with Jesus. That's the best place for him. Because the best place for my baby is with me.
Right.
But if we hadn't gone through that, would I have ever stopped and hit my knees and cried out at the volume?
Right.
And followed by the silence to hear.
Yeah.
Because God took that and he used it as a moment to kind of reckon with me.
Yeah.
And say, I've called you for more. I'm not done with you. You need to listen. You need to pay attention because we have more to do still.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, you tell your kid, get up, brush off. We got to keep going. And he used that, to get me back on track.
Yeah.
And I had this crazy experience with him, and that's then what made me start listening again. And listening to, you need to go get your master's. You need to go start looking at the chaplain route. You need to go through these different areas. Well, I don't know that I ever would have stopped and cried out and listened if not for that. Yeah. So no, God did not take my baby. God did not take your baby if you had a miscarriage, but he is going to use that to let you minister to others,
right,
and to get you to a place you never thought you'd be. Because I never thought this was not on my bucket list of a journey to do.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that I never thought we would be doing, but here we are doing them.
Yeah.
So
through
the pain.
The pain.
Yeah.
A horrific moment. Anyone
Yeah.
that's ever dealt with that, right? You know, in any of those, any moment like that, to go, okay, God, I believe you're sovereign. I believe you love me.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't blame God for the evil in my life.
No.
But I look for him to turn that evil into something good.
Yeah. If this bad thing's happening, okay, well, but where is God?
Yeah.
Because he's here.
He is there.
He's somewhere in it.
Yeah.
You just sometimes have to look a little harder.
Right. And to believe, again, kind of on the backside that, you know, I will sing again. I will see again.
Yeah.
I will hear again. I will make it, you know, there is joy in the morning, you know. Scripture is so full of that idea, because it's true.
Yeah.
It's that moment. Yeah, man, I can barely breathe today, but I know tomorrow I'll breathe fully.
And I think too, a little bit, we're not the main character.
Yeah.
So
I
know it's shocking.
Stop that.
It's shocking.
It's all about me, man.
But what we're going through, it might not be for us, which I think is really kind of hard.
You're going to mess people up there.
I know. But it's bad, right? Because, you know, if someone else is going through something that's terrible, life-altering, whatever, but now their community gets to come around them and love them and support them, well, they don't know how God is talking to the community,
right?
And how the community is now seeing and hearing and feeling God in a different way because they're trying to be obedient, right? They're trying to do what they need to do to support that member, and all the while it's drawing them closer to God. So, like, sorry, you might not ever know why you went through that or what the good came out of it. You might not get to. We talked about that with the prodigal son. You know, you might be there for the distance and not be there for that embrace. Which I think that's hard. Sorry.
It is
like
hard.
That's terrible, but it's true. We gotta know all the answers at the end. Hopefully that's the right theology. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's completely right, and it's a hard theology. Because again, you know, I've said this from the pulpit many, many times. Christianity is the weirdest thing in the world. Because it is all about me until accept Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. Then it's never about me ever again.
Nope.
Right? It's this moment, you know, I'm saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Spirit. Well, that's great, but it's not about you anymore.
No.
It's about everyone else around you. It's about the body. And I think, you know, I'm very cautious about what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it. Oh, well, I got a microphone. I can say it. Too often, what we are concerned about in America, the American church, because I work with churches all over the world, and I don't see it in the other churches, is we're always concerned about me. How does this impact me? You know, I'm not going to come to church today because of X, Y, Z, whatever that is. Never asking, well, how would that impact the people that sit next to me? That I normally, how's that going to impact the ushers or the greeters, or how's that going to impact the children's ministry? How's that going to impact, right? We don't think of that because we think about, I need a day off. I need, you know, I need a rest at this moment. I need, you know, we don't think any of that because again, it's about me. I'm tired today. I don't want to go to church, and it's not going to hurt anybody. Well, can I tell you, it's going to, because if we are the body, right, then we are only fully the body when we're actually fully united together. And so if we're missing parts of who we are from time to time, then we're not fully together.
No.
And so, you know, that there's that struggle there in that moment to go, man, we're missing something if for some reason we think it's about me.
And I would say when the moment you start thinking it is about me, that's the prowling.
Yes.
That's the prowling.
Oh, that's the enemy definitely trying to convince you, you know, that, hey, you deserve this. You deserve, you know, those moments. And I'm a pastor. I could tell you there's Sundays I don't want to be at church. Now, Let me just tell you, I've never had one here. Praise God. I've been going on.
You can't admit it to us.
Fourth year, right? Yeah, I couldn't. I've not had a Monday morning where I've wanted to quit at this point. But I can remember times and go, man, I just don't have it today.
Yeah.
But I realize it's not about me.
Yeah. Now, frame that though with the importance of rest.
Yeah.
Because Jesus did rest in his ministry, and I think especially for the members of our church who do have, leadership or they have a high level of involvement, well, we do have to follow God's example, Jesus' example, and rest. Because he went away from his ministry and had time to recoup. So what's the balance there between you can't miss, now are we serving a God of busyness and, becoming Marthas, right? Poor Martha, she gets such a bad rep. Versus recovery.
Yeah, you're talking about in our world, we call it sabbatical.
Yeah.
Right? The rest, right?
Yeah.
Sabbath rest, those moments. Yeah, and I think, obviously leadership is one thing to think about. Serving's another as well. And I'll tell you, like, for me personally, I try to be gone from the church 2 weeks out of the year.
Right.
2 Sundays out of the year. And it's hard for me because I love this church. I love the people here. I miss them when I'm gone. But I try to also have those Sundays where I'm not preaching somewhere else, where I just go to another church and to attend, because we all need those rest moments. And so I think it's that balancing out and knowing what that looks like, from a rest moment, to say, I'm starting to grow weary in doing good.
Yeah.
Those when we begin to get to that moment to say, okay, I need a rest, I need a time, and what we see Jesus doing so often is going in seasons, in moments, in days, for him to go rest, to go be with God, to rejuvenate himself.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for leadership to do that. And so I'm glad you brought that point up, because I don't want anybody to hear me like you miss church, you're a heathen.
Right.
But what you'll notice by those that take sabbaticals and take rest, they always get their spot covered.
Yeah.
There's a I don't wake up on Sunday morning and go, I need a rest.
Right. There's preemptive planning here.
I'm like, hey, you know what? So I take a sabbatical in June every year.
Yeah.
And I'm gone for a week. Not normally from church, just I leave Sunday after church and I come back normally Saturday, Friday, Saturday.
Right.
My cell phone goes with me just as my GPS, but it's on do not disturb, no telephone, no TV, no computer, right? I'm on my motorcycle and I'm riding, and then I go hiking somewhere and I'm, probably reading a couple books, and it's just my time with God, but that's planned out. It's every June. It's planned out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the counterbalance there of that, for me, I know me personally as an introvert, what I need from a people over stimulus concept. I understand that the best thing for the church is to me being gone at times, to take those 2 Sundays off a year, to go on that sabbatical, and to understand that. And so, I look at rest as actually being beneficial for the church.
Yeah.
As much as it is for me, it's beneficial for the church because it gives me new life. It gives me new rest. My wife and I just went on our anniversary, 32 years. And, we purposely go somewhere where we don't have internet.
Yep.
Where we don't have phone, right? Why? It's not that I don't care about the church, but I need to disconnect.
Yeah.
But when we leave, we have we have a group of people that I trust. In fact, can I just tell you here, Jen and I were talking about, I think the second to last day we were gone, and I said, this is the first time in 10 years that I've not worried about the church, because we had leadership in place. That I'm not worried the church is going to burn down. I'm not worried, right? All this other stuff that we've had to worry about. And so I think, from a sabbatical.
You took the matches with you, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I made sure our insurance was really good when I left. but I think is when we think about rest specifically for leaders, you must take times of rest, but they need to be planned, and then trying to equip the individuals around you
to cover,
to be that part. Because even when Jesus went on rest, his guys didn't stop doing ministry.
Right. I feel like that's the part of the story that often gets missed.
Right.
Because we just assume the disciples are like skipping rocks while Jesus is taking a nap or something, right?
Right. And even the chosen, unfortunately, kind of does a little bit of that, where it's like, well, we're just waiting around for Jesus to show up.
Yeah.
But the truth is, they're still continuing to do some ministry, teaching, reading, ministering to one another. So, I think it's an interesting concept. But again, Jesus took breaks because it was best for the people as well.
Right.
It wasn't just about him.
Yeah.
And
even
I think
Jesus is not the main character, you're saying. In that regard, like he's a main character, but in that regard, he's taking care of himself to take care of others.
Because he knew that he needed to rest. Yeah. He knew, those moments needed to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's kind of just wrap this, because I think we could talk about this a lot.
Oh yeah.
But when we
questions on Sabbath, man.
When we talk about sin and again the enemy's ability, I think when we begin to understand that he's prowls around like a lion, not a lion. He's not right. The term there is like.
Right.
He's not a lion. He's like a kitten. And
that visualization.
Speaking into our lives, trying to speak into our lives.
Yeah.
And trying to again work with our desires, work with our temptation, work with things that we're already weak in.
Yeah.
And we take that and go, okay, I reframe that. I think about how God is, who I am in God, and my purpose on this life, my purpose in this world. And, I love the fact that, what you brought up from a family standpoint, Stephanie's purpose in life is to be a mom in that moment. And so what does a mom look like? Well, it's a Christian mom, hopefully, which means I'm training up a child in the way that they should go. So then I'm beginning to use those, like working with Walter and saying, hey, dude, we're going to pray, we're going to worship for homeschool. What are you doing? You're training him in the way that should go. So again, those things, like when you burn the toast, your reaction is teaching him, right?
Yeah.
Changes how we think through things.
Oh.
And then so the enemy's, hey, this is just one more thing, right, to tell you can't do it. One more reason, you just begin to silence him, or what Jesus did to Peter, and he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan."
Yeah.
I love that response to Peter, because Jesus didn't play with him. He didn't, like, what's wrong with you, man? He just spoke right into it. He goes, you're listening to Satan.
Yeah.
And stops it from that point. So I hope this was helpful to everyone listening. And again, like us on social media, comment questions. I'd love some more topics because really at this point I've got a list of topics. But what I love more than anything is like your email the other day is like, this would be a great topic for a podcast. Yeah. So if you guys got anything out there that you want to talk about, then just let us know. But again, engage with us in social media. Let us know how things are going and where we can be helpful. Yeah. And we'll see you in the next episode.